Last night, I finally got to try the only phenethylamine that I still really had much interest in, 2C-D. I had nothing better to do, and I asked two of my friends, J and K, if they were down with tripping. I had only one 40-milligram dose of 2C-D saved, and I had dibs on that. Kay liked my description of 2CB, so I gave her my last dose, 23 milligrams, because I don't seem to react as well to 2CB as I did my first couple times. Jay thought a 14-milligram dose of 2CE sounded like a good plan for himself. During this trip report, you'll notice comparisons to 2CI and 2CB for two reasons. First, these are the only other 2C chemicals I've tried. Second, 2C-D seem to be in between these chemicals in several ways. So around 10 p.m. we all ate our doses. Soon after we ate them, Jay's flatmate, who tends to get on my nerves, came by with his younger brother. His brother was fascinated by all the psychedelic activity, and I discussed the origins and effects of these drugs he'd never heard of. Then, of course, I had to explain that no, I didn't have any for sale, but I knew this kid would have his eye on me and my fellow trippers that night. About 5 minutes after dropping the 2C-D, I felt my first alert. A mild but unmistakable phenethylamine feeling was building. Soon after this, I noticed my heart rate had increased by perhaps 50%. At this point, I was unsure if it was just the anticipation or actually from the drug. Perhaps 30 minutes after dropping, this kid, Frosty, came over and brought Need for Speed Underground 2 with him. We popped that in the PS2 and took turns drag racing and circuit racing each other. We played for perhaps an hour, and it was during this time that I experienced the 2C-D come up. The first thing I noticed was a bit of muscle tension, which wasn't at all that different from the effects of 2CI or 2CB, but less pronounced. Also, my heart rate seemed to continue to increase to around 100 BPM, perhaps faster at times. It seemed like the 2C-D was definitely stimulating my cardiovascular system, but well within the acceptable range. Smoking a bowl of cannabis would have done about the same. Soon I noticed that the video game was getting more intense. At first this was great, and I had a few great races and was almost unbeatable. But soon I wasn't all that interested in playing the game and was happy just to watch for a while. Soon after, perhaps by the 1 hour mark, I noticed a significant mood lift and increased sociability. I enjoyed the conversation with my friends and the couple people I barely knew, and had no anxiety about tripping around these people. I was getting fairly high as well. The body feeling was pleasant, with less uncomfortable stimulation that I find with 2CI, and less of the shaky, tense feeling that can come with 2CB. I thought it was smack dab in between, and seemed to be the best of 2CB and 2CI. As I engaged in conversation, I noticed the reported smart drug effects. Indeed, my memory, concentration, and thought processes were far from impaired. In fact, I felt kind of like I had taken a nootropic, like piracetam, because I was feeling rather sharp. But, as I looked down at the carpet and saw the first signs of movement, and the body high increased, it did become more difficult to communicate. Yet I remained social, laughing at people's jokes and occasionally chiming in. My sense of humor was most definitely heightened. I had to pee, so I finally got up off the couch and walked to the bathroom. On the way there, it seemed like the visuals finally hit me. Wow, this stuff really is beautiful. Once again, it seemed like almost a cross between 2CB and 2CI, but certainly with its own character. I find that 2CI has crisp, flowing, patterning visuals. 2CB seems to have more diverse LSD-like visuals, with color shifts, perspective distortions, as well as patterning. 2C-D once again seemed like the best of both. When I walked into the kitchen on the way to the bathroom, I immediately noticed how brightly colored everything was. With most psychedelics, I can identify the primary colors that they enhance. LSD, for example, seems to emphasize blue and yellow. Mushrooms seem to emphasize red and green. 2CI tends towards purple, pink, and ceramic-looking off-white colors. Well, 2C-D seem to enhance every color equally, so instead of looking like normal color shifts towards certain ends of the spectrum like with most drugs, everything simply looked very colorful and with an added degree of bright and dark contrast. The tiles on the floor weren't really flowering or pattering so much as lifting up, sinking, and twisting. But the most unique element seemed to be the perspective visuals. When I turned my head, it really appeared as if the room turned halfway to greet me. If I moved closer to a wall, it looked like that wall was coming closer to me. So I spent a couple minutes simply turning my head in different directions because this was really interesting, especially on top of the intense colors. Really, everything looked pretty cool. When I got to the toilet, it was hard to tell the real color of the toilet water, and as I pissed in it, the toilet squirmed around a bit. Around this time, I remembered Morning Glory Seed's description of 2C-D as heavy tofu, and I thought this was pretty accurate. I was tripping hard, yet I was experiencing very little anxiety, having a fun social evening, and the 2C-D felt pretty easy on my body. However, I was not enveloped in a fully psychedelic mind state, which, given the nature of the evening, I'm glad for. My thoughts were not twisted or out there like on many other psychedelics. My thoughts were clearly my own, with an added sense of humor and an added sense of intelligence. I went back to my place on the sofa, and they were watching Family Guy or something like that, which was entertaining as usual, and I cracked up at a lot of the jokes. At some point, some bowls of cannabis were passed around, and I took a few cautious hits to test the interaction. The cannabis really didn't seem to do much in terms of intensifying the trip. Actually, the 2C-D seemed to overpower the drowsy, cloudy-headed nature of the cannabis. The cannabis mostly made me more aware of my body, which happens on many psychedelics. Fortunately, my body was doing just fine. A noticeably but acceptably higher heart rate, a bit of muscle tension, but not so much that I couldn't relax my body anyways, and a nice buzz which felt like signature phenethylamine and very smooth. I should note that my stomach, which absolutely hates mushrooms, HBWR, and sometimes 2CI, was perfectly fine. Basically, I have a pretty sensitive digestive system, and it gets pissed off easily. The only thing the 2C-D did was give me a couple nice unexpected burps throughout the trip. Considering I had eaten some nasty microwave fish which made me nauseous a few hours earlier, I was impressed at how well the 2C-D treated my digestive system. Perhaps 3 hours into my trip, while I was still peaking, this guy I never met before, who looked like a cop, he was actually a firefighter, and his crack whore acting girlfriend came over. When they did, I was really glad I was on 2C-D and not mushrooms or LSD, because there was no anxiety meeting these people. Kay had brought over a video of a party at my friend's house a few years ago, where all kinds of shit went down. Stuff got broken, and the cops ended up coming. It was really entertaining to watch everyone in states of extreme inebriation doing stupid stuff on camera. After this, we watched a couple Aqua Teen Hunger Force episodes, which I always think are hilarious. 4.5 hours in, and I was still more or less peaking. I did not find that, as many other reports have mentioned, 2C-D drops off as quickly as it comes on. In fact, the come down was pretty drawn out and smooth, which I was glad for, because I was really enjoying the drug and didn't mind it sticking around a bit longer than expected. Then the firefighter wanted to watch some videos of this Hispanic comedian. I forgot his name, unfortunately. The first video was entertaining. Most of his jokes were based on race and attempts at offending everyone possible, and his delivery was pretty good, so it was funny. Then that was over, and we watched a second video from this guy. Okay, it was still pretty funny, but more race humor. By the third video, which happened to be way longer than the other ones, I was starting to get kind of pissed off. The comedian was basically saying that if you don't agree with him and his views, you're stupid. The parts of his routine that weren't about race tended to be political jokes, making fun of liberals and using misinformation and ridiculous leaps of logic to support his conservative politics. The firefighter and his girlfriend kept saying everything he says is true. Oh my god, he's so funny. When he finally made a joke supporting the 3 strikes and you're out laws, because he said, without such laws, people could murder 3 people and not go to jail, I finally spoke up. Then I started thinking, how can drug users and crack whores support policies rooted in bigotry? The same policies that are designed to put them in jail by the same people who look down upon them as a lower class of people. I consider myself to be a politically conscious person, and I am a liberal in most of my politics, and it was a real downer on the tail end of my trip to have to keep watching this comedian who basically stood against everything I stand for, and to have a few people in the room constantly remarking about how brilliant he is. I closed my eyes and noticed line art type visuals and thought about the new generation of my ideological and political enemies. It was interesting because many of them are fun people and I enjoy their company. However, on another level, I realized that my country is ideologically divided, and it seems to me it is between those who are sensitive to other people's needs and welfare and those who are too wrapped up in self-righteousness to give a fuck. The 2C-D was certainly not making me pissed off, but my environment was, and the 2C-D was causing me to analyze this. I don't mean to piss anyone off in this trip report, but what good is a trip report unless I'm honest? I forgot to mention, after the 4th hour or so, I was smoking bowls pretty regularly, which eventually started getting me pretty stoned on top of the weaning trip. Also around this time, I started working on about 250 milliliters of Malibu coconut rum, which I swigged right out of the bottle and finished off pretty soon. The rum tasted delicious and mellowed out whatever stimulation I might have still had from the 2C-D. The only complaint I have is a mild headache that occurred around the 5-hour mark and persisted until I fell asleep. I still have a very mild headache today. This could have been from dehydration, though, because I was only drinking booze. Either way, it was mild enough to not be a deterrent. Eventually, I noticed it was 5:30 a.m. and thought, shit, I better get some sleep soon. So I smoked a couple bowls, watched a couple episodes of The Simpsons, and passed out with no problem just over 8 hours after taking the 2C-D. All in all, I would rank this above 2CI and 2CB. It feels healthier, is very good visually, and causes very little anxiety. I hope to get to try this one again. Next time I would take 50 milligrams or so. I imagine at the 10 to 15 milligram range, this stuff would really improve lucidity of thought if I was trying to write a paper or something. Even today, 20 plus hours after taking it, I feel a little bit of a nootropic-like cognitive enhancement. Good stuff. I just want to say thank you for listening to this. I am completely new to this whole reading trip reports thing. This is something I'm just very passionate about, and I wanted to put some content out there and, just of something I'm interested in. So just thank you so much for listening. Any feedback is appreciated, and here's some bloopers. When I got to the toilet, it was hard to tell the real color of the toilet water, and as I pissed into the toilet, what the fuck? Considering I had eaten some nasty microwaved fish, which made me nauseous a few hours